Hey, good morning. I'm Mike Burnett.
I'm Ella Burnett.
We're friends of Scott from way back, Dean Hayes, we should say, from our time in Virginia Beach together. And he's asked us to be interviewed for your class. And so he sent us the questions, and we're going to interview ourselves for you this morning. Apologies about the quality of the video. Our TV studio at home is down, so we're just using, the laptop, and we've got a really strong key light here and some glare. So forgive that. We don't have the awesome technology like you guys have there. So all right. Anyways, as best you can you recall what happened after graduating from school?
From graduate school?
We got married. Actually, we got married before. She graduated. She graduated before I did, but I wouldn't marry her until she finished her thesis. And so, after school, we went straight to Atlanta. And my last year of grad school, I had an internship at Seven Stages for scenic design. While I was there, their TD quit, and I kind of talked them into hiring me as their full-time TD designer. Went back to grad school for a semester and then finished early. The last semester I was in grad school, I was actually in Atlanta working on the thesis and working. She finished and then came to Atlanta and was our equity stage manager and charge painter, sometimes box office, sometimes office person.
Yeah.
That was right after, right directly from grad school. Even kind of before grad school ended, we were there. Working.
I graduated December 97. We got married February 8th, 97.
Yeah.
And 2 days later, we were in a production meeting.
Yeah, do you remember the show?
That was Whispering Horses.
Nope. All My Sons.
No, it was Whispering Horses.
No. All My Sons came first because you were the ASM. You were the ASM for All My Sons.
Yes, but that wasn't production.
It was All My Sons. But yeah, we got married. We had to shorten our honeymoon because we had a production meeting right away.
We had to move our wedding date.
We did, yeah, because of
our groomsmen were in a production.
Yeah. The lesson learned on this is that theater will control your lives if you let it. But, one of the things I think, we've been together, married now 22 years as of a couple of weeks ago, and we've worked together in theater. I would say almost every show we've worked on, we've worked together in some manner, whether it's officially, like, one of us designs and one directs, or unofficially asking each other questions on, how they would approach, parts of the show or things we're having issues with, or just someone to vent to, or to celebrate the happiness of it. All right. How many different kinds of jobs have you had? I'm going to answer first because mine's the easiest. I graduated school and was a full-time professional designer technician, and then became a professor and have worked at a number of different schools, but they're all kind of the same: faculty designer, faculty technician, technical director, head of theater, those kind of things. They're all kind of geared. Once that one job in Atlanta, we left that, I did the traditional become a professor route. Ella, on the other hand,
I've kind of pieced together jobs all along. I started out, I was assistant equity stage manager, then I was an equity stage manager, but I was also box office, painter. During the runs of most of the shows, I was also wardrobe. Then we moved to North Carolina. And I got a real job.
Yeah,
we had kids.
Defined by that's like an 8 to 5 job, like an office job.
Had an office job for a couple of years, but I was still doing costumes on the side.
Moved to Indiana.
Still painting on the side. Yeah. Moved to Indiana. Was an adjunct for a while. Went back into an office job that was flexible and allowed me to adjunct for a while. And then I was a visiting professor for a year in costume design. And then we moved
to Virginia
Beach, where I worked part-time in an office and then part-time props, scenic artist.
And then we came here, and she's had an office job. That's kind of her day job. And then I freelance.
I direct and scenic paint and design sets and design costumes.
I think one of the neat things about our career together, very early on when we were in Atlanta, we had a conversation about whose career should we follow. And, we could have stayed in Atlanta. And I think the world of Ella, right when we left Atlanta, was when she was kind of coming into her own as a charge painter. She had painted on a couple of sets at Seven Stages, painted on one at Theatrical Outfit. Her name got tossed around by some other designers. The Georgia State Opera hired her to paint this massive, like 70-foot wide seascape drop. And she made the decision to kind of leave that so that I could pursue, my career as an educator. And everywhere we've moved, it's been because of my jobs, and then she's picked up, the odd jobs after that. And, I admire the heck out of her for that, because, she, for the last 7.5 years here in San Angelo, she's been an office coordinator for the Department of Education. It's not a glorious job. It's one that her theater training, as a stage manager, as a a problem solver, it really helps her in that job. But it's definitely not a fun job. It's kind of a boring, wouldn't you say? But we had that conversation early on, and I wouldn't have the career I have if it wasn't because she gave up having a career in theater. And what's great about here in San Angelo, full-time career, here in San Angelo, she stepped out of her comfort zone and has directed a number of plays. The first play she ever directed was a musical. She's directed a number of musicals since we've been here. She's designed at a number of the theaters here in town. Has stepped in as a stage manager on a couple of ballet productions, and so she kind of gets her, her theater fix, not full time, even though we all know that when you are part of any show, it's a full time job. Yeah. So she'll do a 8 to 5 job, and then turn right around and go into rehearsal for 4 or 5 hours at night, painting. Some of those times painting after that, depending on the show.
2, 3 in the morning.
Yeah. How did you get to where you are now? Well, we just kind of talked about that. My educational roots, so we're in Atlanta. Our theater started an internship program, and I was in charge of it. And I realized, through working with these college kids, that I really enjoy teaching. And that's kind of where we decided to make that switch. My first job teaching was at a high school in Atlanta. I discovered I did not want to teach high school in Atlanta. Took a job as a professional, as the TD for a PAC, for Performing Arts Center. Taught adjunct there for 3 years. Got a full-time teaching job in Indiana at a Christian university. Was there 6 years. Left the year before I was going to get tenure. Word to the wise, don't do that. And it was by choice. It wasn't one of those, oh, you're not going to get tenure, you need to leave. I was going to get tenure. The president and the dean were some of my best friends. Tried to talk me out of it. I was headstrong and arrogant and wanted something better. We both ended up teaching on the same faculty in Ohio. I'm going to hold on for a sec. We're recording, so you need to be quiet, all right? All right, your glasses are over there. We have a teenage daughter, by the way, also. So, left there, went to Regent on a big faculty as the designer primarily, and then left there to come here to ASCU, Angelo State, where I'm the assistant director of theater, head of the design program. The head of the design program is because I am the design program. So I like to throw that out. I'm the head of the design program, but you know what? It's only me. So, and then Ella's just kind of, everywhere we went, she would find a job. And, one of the things that was a little scary every time we moved, she would start looking for a job before we moved.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be until a couple of months after we got there. And so there's a lesson to be learned there in trusting God and faith that He's going to take care of us. And He's shown that every time. Like just before our money would run out, she'd get a job, and a pretty good job too. So, what advice would you give to seniors just leaving undergraduate training?
Just undergraduate?
That's what it says. Yeah. Leaving undergraduate training. Don't burn bridges.
Yes, definitely don't burn bridges.
the things that I tell this to my students a lot, the things that you have 100% control over need to look really sharp. So things like your resume, cover letters, portfolios, those kind of things need to not have errors, need to look formatted nicely. I've thrown out a lot of job applicants in my career because they couldn't spell. And, and my philosophy on that is, this is a piece of information that you have 100% control over, and yet you're choosing to turn, to job search with something shoddy. And that speaks about who you are. And that's the kind of person I don't want on my staff.
I would just remind you that theater is a very, very small world.
Very small.
You never know who's going to know who. So, like we said, don't burn your bridges, because you don't know who's giving you a reference on the side.
Yeah, big time. We got stories we could tell about that, but we're limited in time. Do you think it is necessary to get an MFA? Obviously, we say yes, because we both have MFAs. Not necessarily, though. A number of our students that have graduated have careers and are very happy doing what they want to do without that graduate training. I feel like they have a pretty good undergraduate base to fall on, but I think mostly if you need the MFA for what you need to do for a career, then yeah, like if you want to be a professor somewhere, you should get an MFA. Right?
The only reason I have an MFA is because I don't have an undergraduate degree in theater. I have a minor, and so I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up until I graduated from undergrad, so that's why I have an MFA.
Yeah,
but I haven't, other than the 1 year I taught full time, I don't know that it's been very helpful.
No, but there's some of the
yeah.
techniques and stuff you learned have made you more marketable.
Was worth it. Yeah.
Yes, the paper maybe not so much. Yeah. Yeah, I'd say that's probably fair. Yeah. We're kind of MFA snobs. We think more of the MFA in practicing theater than a PhD. Don't tell my colleagues that, but there's a difference between a practical working degree, which is the MFA is a professional theater degree. A PhD, most PhD programs are more of a theory and criticism based. There's some now that are forming that are more practical based. You can be a tenure track professor with an MFA now. You can work professionally with an MFA. You work professionally without an MFA too, but there's some good training out there that you're going to get if your undergraduate experience wasn't as full as you might want it to be. I tell my students, that want to go teach, a lot of them are like, oh, I want to go to this school, but they're not giving me an assistantship. What I tell them is go to the best school that'll pay you. That'll pay you. We both went to a school that offered full assistantships. She graduated without any student loans because of it. I did not, because I'm an idiot in that. But if what you want to do is teach, and the MFA is the key to teaching, then get the degree at the school that you think is the best that will pay you to be there. Yeah. Anything else on that? Would you have had more experience before going to graduate school if you could do it again? I think what Scott's asking is, we both went to grad school straight out
of undergrad.
Yeah, and I think what he's asking is, should you take, you okay there? Should you take some time to work? And that answer varies depending on the person. I knew for me personally, if I'd have taken time off, I wouldn't have gone. And when I interviewed at my grad program, the costume design professor, I had the opportunity to be a full-time TD at my undergrad. And she asked me, what are you going to do as the TD there that you haven't already done? And that's a very good question, because the answer is nothing. I was a TD as a student, as a designer as a student, and I wasn't going to get any better staying there. And so I chose to leave right away. Otherwise, I think I still would have been there.
I regret never doing summer stock. I never had that opportunity, or never took that opportunity. So that's kind of an experience I think I missed.
Yeah, and you can do that in grad school. You can do that in undergrad. A number of our students go off and do summer work now more than they used to. Yeah, I would say trying to get experience outside of your program is a big deal. Summer stock's a great way to do it too, because you find out a lot about who you are and what you're good at, not necessarily in the craft, but how you handle a lot of weird stress thrown at you in weird ways, because your proximity of people is really small in those.
Yeah.
What kind of industry-specific practical knowledge should someone have to move into a professionally minded city of their choice? Oh, that's a good question. Find out everything you can about that town. And when I teach our senior seminar class, which I think is similar to what y'all are in with Scott, is I make the students pick a city that they want to move to and find out everything they can. You know, how many theaters are there? How many professional theaters? How many union theaters are there? If you're a designer tech, are there professional shops that you could get employed in? Are there roadhouses? But then I also ask them things like, find out how much a gallon of milk costs there. Find out how much the average rent is. Find out how much parking is if it's a big city, or the transit, the metro, and really we're both major believers in like cost analysis of everything. Mm-hmm. Every time we've moved, we look at what my salary would be, what she would need to make in a job, what the rent would be, utilities, all those kind of things. And then it's funny because like everywhere we move, her dad, first question is, how much is a gallon of milk? And I was like, how much is a gallon? What? But what I've discovered is he's smart. It's an indicator of how
expensive your city is.
Your basic things are going to be. And,
Gallons of milk prices change?
Yes, they do. We're talking to Scott Hayes, Eliza's dad. Yeah, okay. Toodle off. It wasn't until we moved to Virginia Beach that it really hit for me, because one of our favorite restaurants opened up there, and I was like, oh, we got to go. And then we went, and then for the four of us to eat, it was like close to $45 for a fast food meal. And I was like, what? But then it was like, those things add up, Find out everything you can. Find out, like when we lived in Atlanta at the time, there were 50 professional theaters. Of those 50, maybe 6 were equity houses. So if you're an actor moving to a place like that, there's a good chance you're going to get a lot of work right away, because you may not get in the equity house, but you're going to get some kind of, and it may be, $100 a show or something, but it's, you're there working. I would find out, that kind of information. Do you have friends there? Do you have friends who have friends there? Do you have family there that you can crash on the couch for a while, or even, what's your closest family or friend that can help you in the case of an emergency? Yeah, that's a big deal. That's a scary thing. If you have kids, I know, some people graduate with kids. What's the school system? I remember in grad school, a couple of our peers, were married with kids, and they were having to navigate things that we didn't have to navigate, and that played into their decision to what school to go to. Like, this school's going to give me a lot of money, but they don't have really good educational programming for my kids. Maybe that's not a good choice. Anything else on that one? Is it good? I feel like I'm talking a whole lot here. I'll let you answer this one first. All right. How do your different skills feed into and or relate to each other? Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. Well, first off, we both have very different design aesthetics.
Yeah, we have the same degree. We should say that.
Yes.
We have the exact same degree.
Yes. And
scenic with a secondary in costuming.
Yes.
Yeah, that's our degree.
But I tend towards realism. I love detail. I love research. I just like it real. He's much more into surrealism and abstract sets and simplification, and he often overlooks details, which is why we work well together, because I'm always kind of coming behind him saying, oh, you should probably do this, or you should probably do that to make it look more realistic.
Yeah, I think some of my favorite times working on shows with her is we don't get to do it as much now because we're everywhere else we've lived, our family has lived several hours away, like 6 or 7 hours. And a big chunk of our drives were talking through the minutia of the shows. You know, whether I was designing on it and she might have been propping it or painting it or not even attached, she would have read it and we'd talk about it. Or the shows that she's working on, I'll read it and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, I read every show he works on.
Yeah.
I read
most of the shows she works on because I know she's going to catch it all, you know.
And I do most of his research for her.
She does because she's really good at that.
I would have been a librarian if I hadn't discovered theater.
Yeah, or a dramaturg if that had been a thing 20 years ago.
Yeah.
No, but it's like one of the neat things on shows. We've co-designed a number of shows together, and it's like the mechanics of it, I'll figure out. The aesthetic of it, she'll figure out. Sometimes where those come into conflict, you know, we have to work through. I have learned over 22 years that she's more than likely going to be right, even though I still kind of argue with her on it some. But it's a thing. The more I realize that, you know, she goes way more in depth into the story than I do. And that's not to say that I don't go in depth to it. And that's not to say I don't do realism either, because I've done a number of realistic sets recently that have been pretty good.
You're getting there.
Wow. Wow. But what's fun is like now that she's kind of started directing more, you know, I'll design. I don't think I've scenic designed for you.
I don't think so.
I've done lighting for you a number of times, but it's kind of fun because there'll be moments like the last thing she directed was a musical. I Love You, You're Perfect Now Change, which is a series of vignettes about relationships. And there are things that I think I was able to accentuate in her director's vision as a lighting designer that helped her tell the story that she wanted to tell. Specifically like the dude in the movie theater one with the light falling. Mm-hmm. That was a really fun, you know, she would come in and say, this is kind of what I want. This is what I want to feel like, you know, and so as, you know, being able to help her fulfill that vision, it's kind of cool, you know. As a designer, I would do that anyways. But when the director is your wife, that's even more fun because, you know, we're each other's biggest cheerleaders, I think, at times, and we want each other to succeed. She's a better painter than I am, so you know, if I'm painting something, if I'm designing something that has a weird paint job or something, she's always. We're lucky in that. In our current situation here at ASU, we're in the same building.
Yeah.
Our offices are in different colleges, but they're 50 feet away from each other. And so there are times when I'll be in my office and I'll say, hey, can you come over and just look at something? Or step into the shop and look at something. And so, you know, it's neat having a second pair of eyes there that I trust implicitly with the level of skill that she brings. She doesn't ask me into her office to look at Word much, but I do go in. She trusts me more than the IT guys, so I'll go in and fix computer, you know.
He fixes my Mac a lot.
Yeah. Can you describe some major setbacks that made you rethink your career? Wow, that year in Ohio was really rough.
That was rough.
Halfway through it was rough. The first half was pretty fun, and then I think that was probably our biggest setback was I went in as a tenure track. She got hired as a visiting costume professor, and
our kids were 2 and 8.
And then and it was nice because our house was 4 houses away from the theater, like just up the street, literally 4 houses. Tech weekend was great because you could just go home. You could get away from her and just go home. And then she had applied for the full-time position and didn't get it. and I think that was probably the biggest blow to both of us because I knew by her not getting it that I couldn't stay there. And my dad and I have had some not necessarily arguments but disagreements about it, about why I would choose to leave a tenure track position because she didn't get the job. But it's I support her 100%, and that was a big blow to both of us.
And there was no other theater outlet in that area.
Yeah, they didn't have a community theater. They didn't have anything else there. And that kind of sucked, and yeah. I'm glad we're not there anymore. It's cold out there.
15 inches of snow.
Yeah, on the first day of spring break. Yeah, we've had some rough patches, through dealing with coworkers who are, difficult to get along with, or, difficult students at times. But, that stuff all kind of comes and goes. Working on shows we don't like, in 6 weeks it's a new show. But that was probably the biggest, wouldn't you say?
Our first move, when we first moved to Virginia Beach, was...
Yeah, it took her a while to get a job.
The recession.
Yeah, that's right. When we moved to Virginia Beach, right when the big recession hit, and gas prices were $4 a gallon, and
milk was $6 a gallon.
I remember we ate a lot of Spam and cocktail weenies. out of cans.
And finding a job was
that was pretty
any
rough.
kind was hard.
Yeah,
because the job market had bottomed out.
Yeah. What have we forgotten to ask you about? What's your favorite playwright? Who's my favorite playwright? You tell me, and I'll tell you yours. Oh, this will be bad. I can tell you my not favorite playwright.
Can you go with Beckett?
Beckett would probably be up there.
Or Brecht.
Brecht, yeah, or Shepard.
Yeah.
Your favorite playwright? Whoever you're working on right now.
I'm working on it.
No, at the moment.
Oh, at the moment.
Neil Simon. I think you like Neil
a lot.
Simon, and I'm not a big fan of Neil Simon, but
I do like Neil Simon.
Last of the Red Hot Lovers you did was really, really cool. That was a really cool one, and she did the scenic and directed it, and then I TD'd it. Kind of weird. It was a weird TD. We had inherited the walls and then redesigned the wall. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah.
How have you navigated your relationship and your personal life? Well, I think...
Or your professional life.
Oh, professional. Yeah. Have you related your relationship and your personal life, professional life?
I don't know. For me, it feels like it's just all melded into one.
Yeah.
I mean, we met in grad school, so we've always been doing theater together and working together and...
Overcoming challenges together, celebrating victories together.
Dragged our kids along.
Yeah, they both do theater, have done theater. I think that one of the big things is we're better than most at time management, even though we're both procrastinators. But
we're both highly organized.
Yeah, like if you were to look at our calendar on the phone for our family, our kids are highly active. Our son was a varsity sports in high school. Our daughter does ballet and Girl Scouts. Our son did Boy Scouts. To be fully able to let them have full lives and us have full lives takes a lot of organization and planning of, okay, who's going from point A to point B at this point to get the kid to here to there, and then trade off to get the kid to here to there. And there was times when both of them would be in some activity, and for 2 hours in the afternoon, we would do together is drive separately to get people. I think one of the biggest things is just being honest and truthful with each other. Like even today. In moving Jude from point B to point C, I had mistakenly said, Mom's going to take you to dinner, which was true.
True.
And she's like, where's she going to take me? Probably Sonic. And I was like, well, Burger King's right there. And I just kind of offhandedly said it, and I know Jude likes Burger King. Well, that is not where she wanted to go, and she let me know, right? But instead of just letting it fester, she's open and honest about it, saying,
I was in the Burger King drive-thru going, do not ever give her options for
dinner. Oh, you actually
again.
went to Burger King?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Because I couldn't talk her out of it, but I was telling you right then and there, don't ever give her options again, because that's my job. If I'm taking her to dinner, I'm giving her the options.
But, it's not that we're correcting each other, but we're just being honest with each other of, hey, I need you to do the laundry tonight because I'm coming in at late, and we both come in late depending on, and we both take turns at it. And unfortunately, when both of us and Jude are involved in 3 different shows, we have, we know just to kind of let it go.
Yeah.
And the house isn't going to be clean. And then as soon as one of us is done with the show and has kind of recovered, then the house starts to get clean again, and we start cooking again and stuff. But we kind of
get used to doing a load every night,
and we developed that. Like in Atlanta, when we were in Atlanta, rehearsals would be like 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Crew call would be like 5 p.m. to 2 a.m. We'd go die at home, get back at 9, and we realized like we didn't have a dishwasher.
We have a dishwasher.
So, but we did have a Sam's card. And you can get a lot of paper plates and silverware.
Plasticware.
Yeah, plasticware. Yeah.
And plastic cups.
Yeah, because it was one of those things of, do we want to come home and argue about whose job it is to do the dishes, or are we just going to throw the dishes away? Now, it's not very earth conscious. But you know what? It didn't damage our marriage, so that's a good thing. Anything else on that? Yeah. Can you describe a situation where your faith and your work intersected or collided? Whoa, it's a tough one. We still got 10 minutes to talk, too.
Oh, wow. Is this the last question?
No, there's one more. I can think of... You want to talk?
You go.
I can think of a show. Well, so in Atlanta, our faith journey is kind of interesting. We both grew up in strong Christian households that were very similar. Hers was Instrumental Church of Christ. Mine was Southern Baptist. Very similar outlooks on the Christian faith. Mm-hmm. And we both in college kind of stepped away from it. And then when we got together, we kind of got together at the same place on that path and joined, kind of went back together. When we were in Atlanta, one of the challenges that I know we were facing was just, it's kind of our first time being around and just dropped into a surroundings of non-Christian people. Not that they were bad people. They were generally good people, but they were just not Christian. They may have been another faith or agnostic or something.
And the crystals and
yeah. Numerology and smellyology or whatever. But I remember there was a time when my artistic director knew kind of where our faith was, and he made a joke about charging a Christian theater company twice what our normal rent was at our theater. And I was like, man, that's pretty crappy, because you wouldn't do that, to an African American or to a minority of some sort. But he specifically singled these group out because they were Christian. And at the same time, we were doing this play called Dream Boy. It's based on the book by Jim Grimsley, and the director wanted the boy. It's about a homosexual boy who gets killed, and he wanted all these Christ-like allegories, visuals, like a crucifixion of this dead kid, and that really conflicted with me because I couldn't figure out why I was so upset about it. And it wasn't until that was one of the main reasons why we left, was because of that kind of an affront to our faith. But in reality, it was kind of an immaturity on my part to not be able to articulately talk about why I didn't think that was a good choice aesthetically and religiously, and we left there. And prior to coming to ASU, everywhere else we worked was a Christian college of some sort. Some a little more conservative than others, but even in those situations, faith was a big part of it. And different teachers approach it differently. Like I was never one when I was teaching at Regent, where we met Scott, or at some other schools. I really wasn't one to pray before class. I just didn't. It just didn't feel right. But I felt like in how I carried myself and how I approached things and dissected things and looking through. One of the big phrases was looking through the lens of your Christian faith. And everything we examine still, I think we look at it that way. And one of the things Ella said early on to some of our students in Huntington was she can have a worship experience with a paintbrush in her hand painting scenery. Because those are and I think that's true. Those are the skills God has given us, and if we're using them fully, then I think we're honoring God in a worshipful way. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to do an Easter pageant every year. It doesn't mean we have to do, there's a book, Turner, I think it's Steve Turner. It's called Imagine, A Vision for Christians in the Arts, and it talks about these concentric circles where, there are 5 circles of art, and the outermost circle is there's no faith at all. And this is like little kids scribbling, or like the trombone player in the back row of the symphony, where his faith doesn't necessarily come out through the art. And as you go inward in these concentric circles, you eventually end up on art that glorifies Christ, that is the Christ story. And so it's like this non-religious art to kind of religious art to like art that's religious but not necessarily Christian. So like things like the Golden Rule, things that are found in other religions are in that third circle. Next is like biblical, not necessarily the Christ, the resurrection story and stuff. And then that inner circle is the art that deals with the essence of what it means to be a Christian, the death, the resurrection, the salvation that comes from accepting Christ. And I've had students ask, as a Christian artist, shouldn't every art you do be in that inner circle? And I would say no. Most of the art I think we choose to do is in like circle 2 or 3, which has good morals, good story, good truths, tries to correct some kind of social injustice. I think those are the things we're drawn to. Social change. And every now and then we'll dip into that innermost circle. We both do stuff at church a lot. We feel like God has gifted us with skills, and we try to use them to make the art in our churches better. We're not always successful. I've done Godspell, is this 6 or 7? I think this is the 7th time. We've both done it a number of times, and that's a show for us. Kind of has a special place because it is going all the way into that inner circle. And when I do approach that show, it's one of those. I can't do that show every year because it's too powerful and exhausting. Because when I approach that one, I want to make sure I'm on my A game, fully. And I can tell you, I've had some pretty worshipful experiences programming lights to the soundtrack for Godspell. Just knowing at the moment of what's going on stage, how that's going to impact the audience in a way that is really powerful. Anything else on that? No? Well, she doesn't say a lot, but when she does, you better listen. How has faith affected the professional decisions you have made? That's the last question on here. So, we approach everything prayerfully, but also I think part of being prayerfully is also like we talked about when we go to new cities to work. We're preparing, we're doing things. There's just not God's going to protect us, jump in the car and go. No, I mean that'd be foolish. Yeah. I mean, He's given us with analytical minds to think about things. I had a student once say, I prayed to God last night and He told me not to run follow spot for Oklahoma. And I said, well, I prayed after you did, and He said you are going to run it. That's kind of a foolish way of using God to get the things that you want. And I think if you're honest with yourself, look at the mistakes that you make prayerfully, introspectively, worshipfully, He's going to lead you down the right path.
And you have to be open to where He leads you. When I was going to grad school, I was certain I was going to go to UNC Greensboro. I had a snowstorm, couldn't make it to my interview. Interstate I-75 was closed. And then this other university called me out of the blue to come Easter weekend and interview. And that's where I met him.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it really has to be, you have to be open to what it, because I mean, the minute I hit the city the school was in, I knew I was home.
Yeah.
And that's where I was supposed to be and not go anywhere else. But they weren't on my, like, they were number 9 out of my top 10 choices. So,
yeah. Yeah. You know, God speaks in the silences. God speaks in the actions. You know, when a door closes, a window opens. It's a cliche moment, you know, but it's true. That opportunity in Ohio where it closed on Ella, the opportunity at Regent opened up, and we were faithful. It wasn't easy. Being faithful doesn't mean it's easy, but we went and had a pretty good 3 years there. And Scott can tell you it wasn't all roses there during the time. You know, we had some of the people we interacted with there were really pains in the rumpus to deal with, and I was probably a pain in the rumpus to them too. But everything happens for a reason, and sometimes that reason is because we're imperfect people. But you know, God is not, and He's got a plan, and He leads you on that path if you choose to go. And when you choose to step off that path, it'll get difficult, but He'll bring you back. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So yeah. Anything else in closing?
nothing I think of.
All right. Well, I hope this was helpful to you. If you've got other questions, you can always let us know. Scott, I wish we could be face to face, you know, sitting in the same room talking again. But hey, one day, buddy, we'll hang out again. So, yeah?
Yep.
All right. Signing off. Bye.